Want to welcome everybody to our meeting on April 7th, 2026 for our Parking Improvements Task Force, our meeting agenda. I want to thank everybody for being here. Looks like the whole crew is here, as well as a couple audience members. So I'm happy to see participation. Hopefully we'll see more participation as we go further into this. And Sarah, can you please do a roll call?
Sure. Brockington. Here. Carton Crandall.
Here.
Colson.
Here.
Decitus.
Here.
Scott.
Here.
Marino.
Here.
And Muncy.
Here.
And Bailiff.
Here. Right. Let's move on to agenda changes. Has everybody had a chance to take a look at their packet and agenda?
Yeah.
Yes. And everybody, does anybody have any suggestions for any additional or changes to our agenda? Look good to everybody? Great. Let's move on to public comment for agenda items. At this point in the meeting, we welcome all public comment on our agenda items. We've got 3 minutes. Please step up to the podium, the microphone, and say your name, where you're from, and any comments that you'd like to make. I'm looking none in the audience, and I don't see any online. So let's move on to the approval of minutes. In your packet, folks, you'll notice that the minutes were provided here by Walker Consultants, and that's on page 4 and 5 in your packet. Has everybody had a chance to go through the minutes and make sure they're correct?
Yes.
Everything was. Okay. Yeah, I'll entertain a motion to pass the minutes from our last meeting.
I motion to accept the minutes.
Second.
And a roll call, please, Sarah.
Those are voice vote.
Oh, voice vote then. Then everybody that approves, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody that disapproves, say nay. I guess not. Good. And so that's approved. And we'll move on to our next agenda item, which is topics for discussion. Let's get into the meat of the meeting. I want to thank John Dorsett for being online here with us today. And our first item of operation, or first item of discussion, I should say, is the parking inventory fieldwork and initial mapping results. And if we go down into our packet, you'll see that on page 6 and 7, along with a map following. And has everybody have a chance to look at that, our parking inventory in our packets?
I was quite impressed, actually.
And John, if there's anything that you'd like to share with us about our inventory here?
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Gregory. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great. The one observation I have, and I've been doing this for more than 3 decades, and so I've been to many cities throughout the United States. One unique factor that you have there in Saugatuck is a very high percentage of your public parking spaces are on street. And I think this survey bears out that of the spaces inventoried, 80% of them are on street spaces. That's not necessarily a good thing or a bad thing, but I think what it does speak to is the city of Saugatuck has a lot of control over a significant percentage of the parking spaces. And so I think that's probably a positive thing for your community.
Good. We see here we have a total of at the bottom here is a total of 800 or 1,868 parking places, and I know I was amazed how many that was, and that really is a lot for a small town. John, when you compare that amount to some of the other smaller towns, do you find that that's a fairly large amount of parking places, public parking in a small town like ours?
I think it is, yes. I believe your citywide population, excluding the township, but just within the city limits, it's, right at 1,000 or maybe a little under. So I think the number of on-street parking spaces that you have and in the total spaces that you have is oversized relative to your population. But of course, during the summer, you're bringing in a lot of out-of-towners who are in town for tourism and to enjoy, what you have to offer.
And thanks for providing the map here as well. Is there anything that you want to share about the map or anything that you think that we should know?
Not specifically regarding the map. We did inventory the accessible parking spaces. Those are sometimes called ADA or disabled or parking. And that's something that I think we want to dig into a little deeper. There might be some opportunities to maybe make the accessible spaces maybe a little more robust in number. We want to be careful because, every accessible parking space that we designate as such then becomes unavailable for someone who doesn't have the placard. But we also recognize that, a number of the demographics might trend to be, inclusive of maybe an older demographic, and we want to make sure that we're accommodating the needs of that group. And there might be some opportunity for improvement there, but we don't want to be too overboard with it for the reasons stated.
Right. Thank you for that. Any other observations, you guys, about our parking inventory field work, or as we go through the map, is there anything that anybody would like to add?
There's no way to find out what percentage of employees are using the parking spaces, right? Because I was just curious, because that's a huge thing that kept coming up is the employees are parking.
Right.
So can we find out possibly how many are parking?
I think that's going to be difficult to find out. I know that, as they do the study in May and start learning the behaviors of parking, I think we'll find that, a lot of the people that are parked the most part of the day are probably employees or owners as well. I had lunch with Dan Brown today, who's had his business across the street for over 40 years. And we used to be back in the day, we used to be parking Nazis back when I had Del Sol. And no, we would. And we would tell people, that park that, but Dan has gotten to the point now after so many years that he stopped doing that because he's kind of give in and give up on it because he finds it, fruitless to try to get those employees to park somewhere else. I think that's going to be something that we talk about as we go further. And as I've stated many times, even before we started the committee, that a lot of the parking that's taken up here on Butler Street and a lot of Water Street is employees. Mike, you know that from having a shop here. We see it in the mornings by 9, 10 o'clock. The streets are already full before the tourists are getting up and moving around. So
I don't know how feasible it would be, but it would be nice if in the same ways the schools do a count day and they pick a day and they count the students, that we picked the day and counted the employees and maybe had them call in or you call them, and how many employees will you have on January the 3rd working? And that would at least give us a general idea of how many employees are here.
It'd be interesting to know how many,
mhm,
are being taken up by employees.
mhm.
I don't even know how many businesses are downtown proper.
Well, then you
Yeah.
have homeowners too, there's
Yeah.
condos.
True.
Right.
If we did that, it would have to be in June or July.
Right,
Because-
you have to do it during the season.
Mhm.
Right.
Problem also
That's a
is
good
that,
idea.
again, like restaurants, the employees may not come till later, I mean, it's.
Well, they should know. If we
Who's
ask them how
working.
many employees
Yeah.
are you going to have today? That would be all through the day. So they would be able to give a number.
That's an interesting point, Carrie. It would take some legwork to do, but I think you could have, if someone could take a day, and I know a day is a long time, but call the businesses and be like, hey, how many employees you got today? How many drove to work? Can you just ask real quick? No one has more than a handful of employees and just go down the list and just call. I think we'd have to reach out. I don't know that we could rely on people to call us, but I think if someone took the time and we called
Yeah.
and just got anecdotal evidence of some sort, I think it's a great idea.
I mean, you wouldn't necessarily know how many of them are parking downtown, but at least you'd have a general idea of how many there are.
But you could ask, if you called my restaurant and be like, hey, Alec, we just asked real quick, find out who parked downtown. I'll say, yeah, sure, hang on. I'll go and ask and just say, hey, yeah, I got 4 people that are parked downtown right now, 2 that are parked up on the hill. Great, click. And just kind of take that anecdotal evidence. I know it would take a day, but it's an interesting.
I would walk around and do it.
Sure,
That'd be
there you go.
And you would have,
That's even better. Yeah.
because of the business licenses, you should have a list of pretty
Mhm.
much all the businesses, right? The city
Mhm.
should have that.
Walking around's even.
I mean, just walking around like.
Now,
Yeah.
now, Wendy, is that sounds like something that you would like to volunteer to do? I mean,
That's an amazing-
you know, I'd be willing to help volunteer as well, but that's something that we wouldn't have to put on the staff to do. You know, our staff, because I know they're pretty busy anyway with everything else they do. I think that's a great
Yeah,
idea.
I would have fun doing
Yeah,
it.
that's a great.
So then I could go see some of the businesses I haven't seen.
Ryan,
140 of them.
yeah, Ryan, could you have Sarah, put, that list together of, that wouldn't take too long, right? To put a list together of all the, businesses that we have that we can, give on to, or give to, Wendy, and then maybe you could do some volunteer field work. And do you think that's something that you can accomplish by our next meeting a month from now?
Did you want it this early?
Oh, no, actually, we talked about.
Maybe that's something.
I'm sorry, you guys. Yeah, you're right. But,
Pick a date and
something this summer, fixed
Yeah.
date. So let's put that in our
After
hat.
school gets out.
And we'll keep,
Yeah.
we'll keep that abreast and, as a project, that we can give Wendy to do.
Field
I
trip.
think that's a good idea. That'll give us an idea of how many, employees, at least a close amount of ideas.
Real data.
And I think as we move forward, as we think about, recommendations, let's really put our heads together about where we can find our employees to park. Where would there be a good place close to town where they could park? So.
Can I just mention something real quick on this map? I love that. This is outstanding work. And I like that there's the different categories of sections. But my point that I want to get to here is to use this inventory to our advantage when we're messaging our recommendations to city council and messaging to our all the residents, is to use this idea of percentages to our advantage. And I mentioned this before when it comes to like restaurant percentages, but can we say things like, instead of, oh, we're gonna do paid parking, say, we're gonna limit paid parking to 20% of spots. We're gonna limit restaurants to 1% of spots and put those like kind of low numbers on it, when in actuality, that's a good amount of spots, right? That means we have 200 paid spots all of a sudden.
Right. I
Right.
agree.
But if we can message it in a percentage way, we're using this inventory to our advantage.
Right.
Rather than people just seeing parking meters. But if we can say, hey, our recommendation to the council is to continue to allow restaurants, but we're gonna limit it to 1% of all parking spots.
Right.
Our recommendation is for paid parking, but we're going to limit it. Does that make sense?
But yeah, and for example, we're gonna limit enforced timed parking to this percentage of areas.
Yep.
We already have timed parking, but of course it's not enforced. So that, that would also be a recommendation as we go forward if we decide, whether meters or meters not. There needs to be some kind of enforcement if we're looking for turnover.
Yeah.
If we're looking for these cars to turn over.
I'm sure people would not even guess that we have over 1,800 spots.
Right.
That's why
Correct.
messaging is so important, here,
Um,
how we're talking to the residents.
But there's still the visual of specifically for
Sure.
restaurants and the comments frequently, people, the visual is obviously there.
Right.
And that's why it's our
Okay,
job.
basically.
That's why it's our job to combat that.
Yeah,
Right.
but the visual will still be there, even if you tell them, oh, it's only 1%.
Ryan, are the survey results from the parking, from this, are they online on our website right now?
They're in the meeting packet available.
They're in the meeting packet, but I mean, if somebody goes to saugatuckcity.com, so this is something that people can look at. Are they available now?
Other than clicking on the packet, if somebody were to like go in and want to see that topic.
Right.
We do have a parking improvements task force page, and we could probably put some of these reports as like separate links or something like that if you thought that there might be some benefit to that.
Uh-huh. And maybe not just maybe the whole thing, maybe the synopsises and saying some of the things that Alec is saying and the numbers of parking that we have. I think it would be nice to have like like you do a fun video like we do sometimes for these city council for manager for your notes. It'd be nice to see something. I know it's early on, but just something to say, hey, we're working on this. This is how many parking places we have found so far. Just some of the positive things that we've found from these numbers. So would be nice to see that out there so that people are aware of it. I know we know people that read our packets know, but how do we get that out there on social media and let people know right away?
I don't know if this is on the topic, but I'd like to know how the streets up on the hill, how that was decided where the parking would be, which side of the street, that kind of thing, because driving around up there are some streets where the parking needs to be switched to the
Yeah.
other side of the street, because once the street where the side of the street where the parking is, there's mailboxes. But the side of the street where there's no parking, there's no mailboxes and there's no driveways. That could be more parking spaces perhaps.
Okay.
So I think that needs to be looked at.
The side of the street that cars are parked on. I believe that we worked on that with the fire department. And we went with his recommendations on what side of the street that they preferred the parking on. So any street in particular that you're thinking about?
Mary Street specifically,
Mary Street.
up on the hill, yeah.
Oh, oh,
I mean, they're putting one of
Right
the
off
residences,
Mary.
right.
one of the residents last summer had orange stakes out in front of their mailbox and a little sign that said, please don't park in front of the mailbox.
Yeah.
Well, that was the parking side of the street.
Right.
And there goes a parking space because they want to get their mail.
Right.
Those
Well,
kind of things. I think that it would be, I mean, I appreciate the work of the fire department, but I think it would be good to go back and look again and see which side of the street is more advantageous to provide more parking spaces. If it was a formula of, okay, we're going to take for example, Mary Street, there's no parking on Mary Street on the south side of the street all the way up, but maybe the south side of Mary on the hill is better for parking than the north side. And for example, down the hill by the post office, that's Mary Street as well. There's parking on both sides of the street by the post office parking lot,
Which should not be.
and that is dangerous.
right.
because
Yeah, we have talked about.
we have to change that and give up either the 3 side or the 4 side of that, because the interurban can't get through in
Yeah.
summer. And the
Right.
fire trucks can't get through.
Right.
Cars coming out of the parking of the post office parking lot frequently have to go to Water Street, and if there's a beer delivery truck at that side, then whoops, you're stuck. You wait until. So Mary Street needs some work.
I agree with that. And I think that, that might be something that comes through as a recommendation to the city when we're done with the study. And I appreciate you keep bringing that up because you're absolutely
They would
right.
be
about that.
willing to do some driving around, looking,
Mhm.
things like that
Awesome.
to
Awesome.
make recommendations.
Yeah.
Are you talking upper or lower Mary?
Both.
Well, Lower Mary is what
Lower
we're just
Mary is
talking
where the
about.
post office is.
Okay, because there's two, we're looking right now on Google Earth and there's 2 mailboxes up on Upper Mary.
And on Upper Mary, it's,
Yeah, I'm looking at that too. And there's only 2 mailboxes, right? On Upper Mary, on that side you're talking about.
but if one of them has sticks in front of it and says, don't park here,
Well, now that's another story.
Yeah.
If somebody, no, honestly, if there's somebody putting on city right of way property that you can't park here, well, then that's an issue where we have to talk to planning and zoning. We have to talk to Ryan, let him know that somebody is violating the law.
That
And
issue is-
and then at that point, we would take the steps to enforce that.
That issue is all over the place because
I see it at some places,
on
yeah.
Mason Street, past the Episcopal Church, the block toward the school, the whole, as I'm heading toward the school, the whole left side of the street has city right of way with daylilies parked in it so that people won't park on that side of the street. And the
Right.
other side of the street is the no parking side.
I agree that enforcement is something that the city does need to work on.
Yes,
as
city needs
we go
to
forward.
reclaim.
We
the
have to
right
have
of
the
way.
resources and we have to make sure that we work on enforcement, just like if we were to have meters or any other kind of enforcement. I think that as we get into our recommendations, I think that's going to be one of our strong recommendations will be enforcement. So from the survey, from what we talked about, I'm sure that's going to come through. But again, on Mary Street here downtown, I understand what you're saying on the hill, but downtown, I'd like to go back to that real quick. While I'm sorry, John, if we're getting too off here, the agenda. But I think that making that parking on one side of the street is important. And I'd like to have a discussion with Greg over at the fire department on that as well. So that would be a good recommendation for him. So talking about what other people think, anything else about our initial mapping results before I move on? And we'll go on then to subject B, online survey, where we can look at our current responses and results. John, would you like to take us through this?
Sure. You all have the survey results. We had a pretty robust participation at more than 600 responses. And, key takeaways, there was a lot of opposition to paid parking. The actual question that is in the survey referenced peak season. And there was a lot of opposition to paid parking and this is primarily coming from, I think, locals who are more apt to participate in the survey. So, it sounds like there's a fair number of business owners, residents, customers that like that Saugatuck does not have paid on-street parking. I suspect that if we would have asked the question, would you be willing to pay for parking off-peak, we would have even fewer people express interest in paid parking. So when you get to that question, I think it's question number 12, keep in mind that it does call out peak season, and that if we were talking about, off-peak, the results might be even more opposition to paid parking.
Mhm.
It also is clear that people do have challenges finding parking, during peak season. That's certainly acknowledged. It's acknowledged based on these survey results. And it confirms and supports why you're having this study done. You have a challenge, and the challenge is, worse during peak season, and I think that's what we're trying to get after here.
And I was looking at these survey results. One thing that I don't know if it bothered me or I was happy about it, but most of the people here that took the survey are people that live here throughout the year, people that had the ability to use the interurban, people that had the ability to ride a bike or walk downtown. I would have liked to have seen more participation from visitors, because it would have been a better idea to find out people that visit here during the summer, what they would think about, some of these some of these questions, so.
Didn't we initially talk about doing the survey twice?
We did, and then, but then again, we found that, it might not be beneficial because a lot of the information is gonna be crossover. So, if we did it twice, then these 618 might be added to maybe 300 or 400 more. I'm not sure how that would, that mix would,
We also discussed that people who had already done the survey would know that the survey that was, when it was done again in the season, during the season, it would be aimed at people who were not here to take it the first time. We talked about that,
we did.
to collect additional data.
John, what do you think? Do you think it'd be helpful if we talked about it before and we kind of thought, there'd be a lot of cross surveying, but what do you think about doing the survey later in the summer and focusing on visitors?
Well, I don't think there's any value in getting those who already participated to participate a second time.
No,
Right.
they wouldn't.
If we were going to try to target visitors, how would we reach them?
Yeah.
Is an
Right.
online survey going to be effective in reaching that population?
Yeah.
There's another job for Wendy, standing at the corner.
Yeah, there you go.
I'll do it.
Just to add, and I think, Walker has a pop-up event or two that's planned for
Right.
The busier season, which is going to get, some more visitors, and, boots on the ground is probably going to be the better place to get some sense from visitors. But, we've even on the logo and branding committee talked about this too, like to reach visitors through surveying is going to be really challenging. And even if they're in town and during that peak season, they're not necessarily going to be wanting to take a survey while they're here. So,
Yeah.
except for maybe a quick question or two while they're out and about at an event or something like that.
One thing I also, looking at the survey and, what like question number 7, what form of transportation do you typically use to go downtown? It's funny to see again, and I guess I'm gonna repeat what I said earlier, is that most of the people that took the survey are people that live here. And most of those people, even though they live within the distance that the interurban covers, they're still using their cars to drive here. So, question number 7, 83%, that are coming here downtown Saugatuck, most of them are driving their cars. And you could go down to question number 7, it's about the same percentage, that they're all taking their cars here. So I think there's a lot we can do to help educate people that live here downtown about interurban, and the services that we provide. So I don't know how we can get to them even more.
I struggle with that as well. If I've been downtown or even driving the bus, and you can see when you're, in your side mirror, you can look at people looking at your bus and pointing and trying to figure out what it is. And there are people that still don't know what the blue bus is.
Yeah.
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 I mean, you say public transportation right on there. I don't know what else to do.
It is hard to educate them, Ryan. It really is hard to educate people. We learned that with Sadaba. Remember when we tried shuttle services for employees, when we tried the shuttle service from Douglas to Saugatuck, which we're going to go back to doing this year. And I remember the last year that we did that, and it was on weekends. I think it was like 68 people rode for that whole summer. So I think a lot of us, that is a nut to crack. How can we get our locals here to utilize the interurban and utilize other forms of transportation to getting downtown?
We are a car society.
Yep, we certainly are. John, anything else that you'd like to go over with the survey with us?
I heard it expressed that, we have a heavy participation by residents, but not as many visitors on this survey. What are you hoping to gain from learning or hearing more from visitors is a question that I have. And then a comment or expectation that I would have for visitors is, I know that you get a lot of tourism from Chicagoland people. And I would venture to say that people coming from Chicago or maybe even Grand Rapids or Detroit or, people coming from large urban areas are accustomed to paying for parking.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't
I-
think they're
yeah.
gonna object to paid parking. I think the
Right.
residents would be more sensitive to it.
Right. And, 600 people taking the survey, that's a lot in our small town here. And you're right about that. I have a friend who's heading to Chicago today. And I know just for one night, they're spending $60 on parking. And they're willing to do that. And that's pretty cheap. I mean, that's like it could be $80 over $100 just for overnight parking over there. So.
Well, people have never objected to paying donation parking for when the high school asks for money at the SCA parking lot, next door to the SCA.
Right.
And in front of the Congregational Church, we have a box and people don't object to putting a couple of bucks in there or clicking on the QR code to donate through whatever service we use. But so people don't object to paying for parking who come in from out of town. The problem is people who come in from out of town don't know how to park off pavement. They only know how to park in the street.
Mhm.
So
I think that's where we get into wayfinding and signage,
Yes.
as we get into that. That might be a good idea, like you're saying on the hill and showing examples.
yeah,
Yes, AJ.
because if the right of way is, if we don't mark that the right of way is a parking space, people don't know that they can park half off the pavement and half on the pavement and not be on the street because they think they have to park on the pavement.
Good
Because
point.
in the cities, they always park on pavement, in parking lots, on the streets.
Good point. And perhaps that's how we can get around that is better wayfinding and signage up on the hill
We reclaim
as we
the
go
right of
forward.
way and mark parking spaces and show people, educate people that they can park half off and half on the pavement.
Right, exactly. And that could be done through signage again. Yes, AJ.
Just on the paid piece, I feel like we often go between two extremes, whereas no paid and then you pay. I don't know why we wouldn't want to explore first, just putting a maximum cap on all parking spaces, a 3-hour limit. And why not explore that and just, of course, they'll have to come with increased enforcement because if people are parking beyond that, then you start issuing tickets and you make some revenue from that. But I would like to flesh that piece out more before we fully jump on board with
Paid parking.
with paid parking.
I absolutely agree with that. I thought about that earlier today. I think that's a great idea of, making a recommendation to enforce what we already have, which is 3-hour parking. And so that would encourage employees to park at which there are close places, to downtown where employees can park that are available that early that just aren't on Butler and Water Street. And I think that, as we go forward, maybe better enforcement might be a recommendation that we make. So. I'll go ahead and yeah, because I know that, you took a big part in our survey here, Sandra. And when we did this about, has it been 15 years ago or? Right.
Well, police did mark time.
It was enforced at one time.
What they don't want to do is piss off people coming here to spend their money.
Right.
And amazingly, a small thing like a ticket of $3 or $5, whatever, does that. And so where you find in most places is they want to make it easy for people to come and enjoy their community. When they can't find a parking place, they just keep going, and we've had, as I said once before, that's all the time, we find a place. But if you make it easy for them to get to something up on the hill and get a shuttle bus down, if you make it easy for them to hop on a shuttle bus, it's back there, they will be happy. If you give them a ticket, there, I remember that, and want to come back to Saginaw, how cheap.
Correct. Yeah. And I think that signage and wayfinding is going to help with that. When we get into that, as well as, when we get into signage and wayfinding, we can also work perhaps with the CVB on helping to communicate that with any future parking implications that we create. So.
Just responsive to that piece real quick. I agree that we want to make sure that we're friendly, but I also think that a maximum time limit is not really affecting tourists as it's more so affecting the people who are working in the businesses
Right.
who take up those spots. So you look at the survey results and how long people are spending in town, right around that 3 hour
Right.
area for events, for dinner, for drinks.
Right.
That's where the turnover happens.
Sure.
The turnover isn't happening from people who are coming here in the morning to work all day.
That's right.
And they just park right there.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Or people who are here because there's an art fair or a something or other and they are a vendor or the market.
Mhm.
And they are parked all day. Which is why the art club used to use the Riverside Church parking lot for their vendors to get the vendors off of the public's parking places.
Mhm.
Well, unless we have a good alternative for workers, I don't think that's a group that so many businesses struggle to keep employees.
Yeah.
And if you're going to make it difficult for them, unless we have a foolproof system that has them shuttled but everybody's hours are so different. So it's going to be a very difficult balancing act. And I don't think there's any employer wants to lose employees because they're frustrated with the parking situation.
Mhm.
So I think that's something to consider too.
Well, the first thing is we have to find property to make a parking lot for them.
Mhm.
Well, good luck with that.
I know.
And I think my intent was mainly just in the greater downtown area, and then that creates a natural filtration system up to the hill and to the high school, and then we park outward and come inward. So, but I mean, if that's too much of a lift for folks too, I understand.
John, when we go to question 9, if we move on a little bit here, we go to question 9, it was typically approximately how long does it take for you to find parking downtown? And we saw 53% off-season, 43% was off-season was 1 to 5 minutes. And then we went back down to parking less than 5 minutes during peak season, and 25% report finding parking in 1 to 5 minutes. I didn't find that as bad news at all. I mean, honestly, if I did, and this is what we're reading from the survey, that folks are saying that they can find a parking spot in 5 minutes or less. I think that's a great thing. Because I know me, somebody who lives here, there have been times where I've had to spend more than 5 minutes finding a parking place, especially during peak times or during festival times. But I mean, I kind of find that as good news. What did you think of that, John?
Well, I think the other thing to acknowledge is some people always look for the front door. And so they find their destination, they drive by the front door, and then they start looking for parking. And so the goal is to, park as close as I can. And that adds to your time, circulating to look for a parking space. Those people are in, these numbers, these survey results that you're citing, and 5 minutes. When you engage in that kind of behavior, you're looking for the front door, and then you start looking for parking. You're circulating around. I mean, 5 minutes isn't that long when you're engaged in that kind of behavior. So, Gregory, I agree. I didn't see anything really that alarming with this question and these answers.
Uh-huh. And when we looked at the individual answers, which I spent quite a bit of time reading those, I didn't really run into anybody that said, golly, it takes me 20 minutes to find a spot. I know when I go to Grand Rapids, even if I go to Grand Rapids and and I'm going to an event there, it'll take me at least 10 to 15 minutes to find a spot downtown there. So, but But yeah, I found that as like, wow, it's funny as much people say it takes them so long. And then here we have 600 or more than 600 people taking the survey saying it takes me less than 5 minutes. That's kind of telling. So, let's move on to question number 10. It was how often are you able to find a parking space where you prefer to park downtown? You know, how often? Again, a lot of these was no surprise to me. A lot of these questions were really no surprise to me. It's a lot of it is what I hear on the street, and a lot of it came as, you know, pretty positive, I think, as far as our parking goes. So, and again, willing to walk. It looks like there's you know, people are willing to walk 1 to 2 blocks. Well, then why aren't they? Okay, and anything else about the survey you'd like to point out, John?
There were some people who said they walked several blocks. I don't remember what question it was.
Uh-huh.
Some people are not walkers. You can't get them to walk, 1 block. And some people can't, some people have mobility issues.
Right.
But it does look like you have some people that are motivated and they're willing to walk 2 or 3 blocks, and that's good. That's healthy for your community.
And then, of course, we already talked to the willing to pay. And you talked about that at the beginning here, that we're getting a strong voice in folks that aren't really happy about the idea of metered parking. So,
I would like to add something to this. I don't know what the temperature of this group, the Parking Improvements Task Force, is with regards to paid parking. I don't pretend to know that because I really don't have an idea. I haven't talked with any of you about this topic.
Well, let's go around the table, shall we? AJ, what do you think about paid parking in downtown Saugatuck? And let's keep it to idealistically seasonal paid parking in the main downtown area, thinking about Butler Street, Water Street, and the streets in between.
Think it's an option to be explored. At this time, I don't necessarily support it seasonally. I think there's other options that we can pursue, but if that's what makes the most sense after we discuss, then I'm open to it.
Okay.
I agree with him.
So
I personally pay taxes, so I don't want to pay for parking downtown.
right. Right, but what AJ said is as we go further that
Or for people who just need to come down and do their errands.
well, you can't really decipher that, you know what I mean, when people come down.
I don't think it would be that productive.
You're not crazy about paid parking.
Nope.
Very good. Alec, what do you think about metered parking?
So much. My first question would be, would you pay 5 cents to park? No, not even 5 cents. Okay, well, then that's an idealistic problem. But would you pay 5 cents? Would you pay 10 cents? Would you pay $1? You know what I mean? Like, where's the limit on what these people wouldn't pay to park? Because that's a real thing. Like, is it the dollar amount? Is it the principle?
I think it's the principle.
Well,
I mean, from what I've heard from people that on the street that live here, it's the principle of it. And a lot of it has to do with, oh my gosh, I'm already paying these taxes. Why should I have to pay for parking?
I do not park in the bank parking lot at all.
Right.
Since they
But
changed
Alec,
it to a pay lot.
Right, Alec.
No, I think a lot of the comments that I see are these principal comments. And those are frustrating because we live in a tourist town and we have nice things because we live in a tourist town.
Right.
And so, like, restaurants shouldn't get parking spots because it's not fair. Well, we're not looking at, like, just out of principle, it's 14 spots out of 2,000. I mean, it's
Right.
wild that people have that thought.
Right.
So it's like, it's a principle thing that's frustrating when we get like the local surveys, like, I get it, but we're not talking about like tangible things. We're talking about the principal things. That being said, if you want to enforce, but not make the tourists angry, just don't make them pay until they get their 5th ticket. Like, have like a warning system where you get a ticket, you get your 5th ticket, then you pay. Does that make
Okay.
sense?
Or 3 strikes or.
Right, 3 strikes. I don't care what it is, like
Right.
whatever, but if you get it, if you enforce, this is your warning, 2nd warning, 3rd warning, and then you pay. And it can be $100 at that point. I don't care. You know what I mean? But then these people who are here for a week are like, I'm not gonna pay this ticket, and we don't care, and it's fine.
Right,
So that is one way out of that cycle, if you want to enforce without making people.
right, right. And when we go forward making recommendations, we need to think about, you know, the city as a whole and remind ourselves that we are a tourist city. I mean, ideally, I want to be able to park wherever I want to park, and I want to make sure that I can get my car where I want to go. But I really have to think about the scope of everything and who I share this community to. And I understand, you know, we do have to, you know, respect our constituents, our taxpayers, and, you know, that they do have, you know, your right to your city, but we are a tourist town, so we really have to think about everybody here. Wendy, what do you think about paid parking?
Well,
Just so John has an idea of our
Right.
temperature here.
I guess personally, I feel like because I'm on this committee, my personal opinion should not influence
Right.
my
Right.
decision because I feel like I should represent, you know, the city. That being said, I mean, I have my opinions, but I think we have to balance not only what the tourist needs, what the city needs, you know, be it paid, and then you pay the enforcement person, you know, out of those proceeds, but you also have to please your people who pay taxes. So we have different factions that we kind of have to balance the needs of everyone.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if that answers your question. I mean, I don't want to give my personal opinion because I feel like it shouldn't matter.
Right.
Because I shouldn't be acting on my personal opinion. You know what I mean?
No.
I mean, idealistically, isn't that what we're supposed to do on these committees? Put our opinions aside,
Right.
look at the data.
You know, I look at it like that too, like we're here to not make a decision, but to help guide a decision, right, for the greater
Right, we
good.
won't be making any decisions as a committee.
Right, that's right.
We'll be making recommendations
Yeah.
to the city,
So,
and they'll be making the ultimate
so
decision.
our recommendations should be for the greater good. But again, like Wendy, I can't say my personal opinion because I doesn't
Right.
reflect on that, right?
Right, like I said.
I'm here to help guide the ship to
Mhm.
make a decision at some point. Somebody's gonna have to make it, and I hope with our knowledge and what we're coming through with the surveys and
Mhm.
sitting down and having all these meetings, that we can come up with something that is gonna be for the greater good.
Mhm. Gary?
I'm against paid parking, proudly. We already have paid parking. If you're coming to this town on a Saturday, you have choices. You can drive around and if you're lucky, you find a spot on the street. Or you can pay the lot and give money towards the school. Or you can park up on the hill and take the shuttle and you can park up there for free. So giving people options, I think, is the best thing. And this survey has shown, even with what we think is there's too many employees parking on the spaces, taking up spaces, the restaurants are taking up spaces, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The survey shows that if you can find a spot within 5 minutes, life is good in Saugatuck, I think.
Right,
For that. I mean, if that's the worst thing,
Right,
then
that was my takeaways too. Yeah, one of my takeaways too. It's like,
so, and to say, well, people from Chicago will pay it. Well, we're not Chicago, and the reason they're coming here is because we're not Chicago. They want this small town friendly environment. We don't want to turn into Disneyland
right,
and charge people for every little thing. I just think it's wrong.
and you know, and John, I want to thank you for providing some of that information from our other towns. When you look at a lot of similar towns like us, most of them do not have paid off-street parking. I think there was only one or two on the list that you provided that did. So I think that's a little telling as well. So, yeah, I kind of looked at the survey and I've got to say myself, and I kept thinking, especially if most people can find a parking place within 5 minutes or less, I'm like, well, what's the real problem here? But anyway, anything else, John? It sounds like, and Mike, and with you.
Well,
Paid
we actually have been discussing this when you and I were.
For years.
For years.
Yeah.
So this is nothing new. I actually brought up the idea of possibly doing paid parking way back
Right.
when, just because there's no other, seemed like there wasn't much, of course, now we're going a lot further, but
Right.
just our roundtable discussions in Sadaba.
Right.
It was like, that was the only fair way to enforce it, like, because someone said, well, write the employee's ticket. I said, you can't do that, you can't single out people because they're an employee and this was not, and start writing tickets based on that. I
Right.
said, if everybody's got to pay $1, then everybody pays the $1, that's the only fair way to do it.
Uh-huh.
I guess, again, if you were to do paid, and I'm not necessarily I'm for it, but it was just maybe a practical way to handle it. But again, it's very seasonal and not all night. I mean, maybe you started at 10 and goes to 6. So people who have to go to the pharmacy to get their prescription, get there before 10, they can park for free, run in. I mean, there's ways to do it where the locals, maybe not feel it, because all locals I know, they don't come in the city in the summer.
Right.
I have so many friends tell me, oh, we don't even go into the city.
Right.
So I don't.
And that's not so much because of the parking,
Well,
as much as the culture.
everything.
Because they don't want to be in the restaurants when they're full and the music gets
Exactly.
loud.
It's a combo.
And I mean, it's not necessarily the parking. I know people that live on the hill, and that's what you're talking
Yeah,
about too,
exactly.
that can walk down to town, that avoid town, and it's because they don't want to be around a bunch of people.
Right.
There are some people that do move here and think that we are a small town. And then we realize, that's always a struggle here. We're a tourist town, we're a small town. You're not moving to a small town when you move here.
But I mean,
You're moving to a tourist town.
Yeah, if we're going down to Phil's, let's just say, I mean, we walk. Because
Right.
we know, why even try to find parking?
Right.
I mean, it just makes just common sense,
Sure.
you just walk down. In the winter, you don't, because it's freezing, so you drive, but there's plenty of parking in the winter.
Right.
So again, I think you could narrow it if that's what we decide to do, where it hopefully wouldn't affect locals that much. And again, it's more to help the tourists,
Mhm.
but I understand being friendly and all that. I get all that too. That makes sense. You
Yeah.
don't want to nickel and dime people. I get it,
Yeah.
so.
Sounds like we're pretty cold on that subject, John.
I think what I'm hearing aligns with the stakeholder interviews, which we haven't discussed yet, but it also aligns, I think, with this online questionnaire. I'm not surprised at what I heard. And the other thing that I will add is I think there's a lot of confusion amongst different cities in the United States. Why are they charging for on-street parking? And some of them have very clear rationale for that, but I think a number of them do not. And there's this notion of, well, I can influence parking behavior with time limits and parking enforcement. And that doesn't necessarily mean I have to charge for parking. I can also charge for parking and not have enforcement. Maybe I don't have time enforcement. Maybe I'm just checking that the meter has been paid and I don't have time limits. You can control parking behaviors purely through economics. On the other end of the spectrum, you can control it with time limits, but no rates. And then we have all this other gray in between where it's a hybrid, but a lot of communities haven't had that conversation and they don't know why they're charging, and maybe they haven't considered that they can influence behavior without charging for parking. And I don't really think, your enforcement there has been pretty weak, and we haven't had that conversation yet, but
Right.
I think there were 80 some odd tickets written in the past year by the county sheriff's department. And that's a small number for the number of people that are circulating through your town every summer.
Mhm. And now those, you said 80, I haven't looked at those numbers. I'd like to see those.
We'll put those out for the next meeting. I have
Okay, good. Yeah, I'd like to see
paper.
that. Are most of those from exceeding a 3-hour time limit, or are they for other parking reasons?
We don't know.
Okay,
The records are not available that would allow us to make that determination. The resources aren't available at the county level to go through all the tickets to answer your
Right.
question, Gregory.
because I know that back when we first opened Del Sol, it was around 2006. It was somewhat enforced by Douglas Police by putting a chalk mark on the tire,
Okay.
and they would put a ticket, and it was in a friendly way, like Sandra had mentioned. Folks that would turn in the ticket on that day, if they went over to the Douglas Police Department, they'd rip the ticket up and just give you a warning. And so it was done pretty friendly back then. The enforcement stopped back, golly, I want to say maybe around 2010 or so, when it seemed illegal to mark on people's vehicles. There was an issue about that, if I remember correctly. And so that's kind of when the Douglas Police, who were in charge of downtown Saugatuck at the time, kind of pulled back on enforcing that 3-hour rule. Mike.
Yeah, well, he was saying he's not, so I have seen, this past summer, I saw more tickets than ever.
Good.
But all the tickets I saw were not for time. They were, someone was parked in.
And a no parking.
And no parking spot. Yeah, they're parked in front of a fire hydrant. They were parked in.
Putting
in front of the
stone.
Women's Club in the,
Right.
or handicaps, yeah.
Right.
I mean, so, but I never saw a cop going around.
Right.
Tracking time.
I haven't either.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't think one ticket got written for that.
Right. That's why I asked that. Thank you, Mike.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, and just to add, I mean, we'll talk enforcement next meeting, and we've provided, a number of responses to John and some inquiries that he had, but essentially there was a specific discussion, speaking to some of the conversations there was prior decisions to specifically not proactively enforce the 3 hours because businesses were upset that customers were being given tickets, and there was concern that was seen as being unfriendly to business. And I mean, I shared it with John. I literally have the email from a previous city manager explaining that to some other folks that had asked about that, and that there was a purposeful discussion around that, and there was some direction not to essentially make it complaint based. So we don't proactively enforce the 3-hour time limits down here. But even along the lines of last summer, there was I think better efforts to at least make sure that we're enforcing what's out there as it relates to no parking areas, things like that. Dave, and you or another council member, I remember saying, I received questions from people saying, hey, it seems like they're being more aggressive, and folks are starting to raise, some questions about the fact that the sheriff's department was ticketing parking issues more, and some didn't seem to be quite, very happy with that. So, it's trying to find that right balance and what's going to work for us.
Right. Well, I wouldn't be upset that they're writing more tickets for parking. Honestly, a lot of people try to break the rules around here. I know we had one business owner that got very used to their parking spot for a very long time, and we had to break that business from their habit. And I see that business owner no longer parking in that spot anymore when they're at their business. So I appreciated that. That's for sure.
Yeah, there's some interesting layers even with the enforcement that we have and options available that we'll definitely talk next time about.
Right. And remember, we're going to get, these are recommendations. Whatever the city follows through with, whatever the city goes through with and thinks are going to be great ideas, we're always going to get kickback, no matter what we do, whether we put meters out or we put meters down. We're going to get some amount of kickback and people that aren't happy. There's always people that aren't going to be happy. So,
And no matter what we do, there will always be people who can't find a parking space on a July evening.
That's true. And so
we have to be realistic about what we can achieve or what the
Correct.
city can achieve,
correct.
because
Yeah,
it's a problem that's not going away, no
Right.
matter what we come up with.
right, correct.
Can I ask a quick question? What is our end game look like? I know it looks like a recommendation to city council.
Uh-huh.
But how long is that? Like, just roughly, I know you can't give me an exact answer, but like, what are we trying to boil this down to as this table to give to city council? You know what I mean? Just like,
Right.
in your mind, what
Right.
does that look like?
So by the end of this will be August. I would think that we would start having kind of narrowing down by our meeting dates in June. I see that's on our agenda here, May 20. I would say by June, we should start narrowing down some of our recommendations and what we want to recommend to the city.
Five
including-
action items?
Pardon?
Like 5 action items, or just roughly?
I think that, yeah, I
Giving
think,
them like a 10-page report, or what is?
yeah. Go ahead.
Yes.
Were you gonna
I
say?
mean, John can tell you exactly the format, but yes, there will be a report that's prepared and, yep, shared with the council. In fact, Walker will help present the recommendations and findings to the council.
Right, right.
And again, like action items, like 5 things, like
5 things, could be, 3 things. could
30
be-
things, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
Yeah, and I
I'm just
think-
trying to get an idea of the scope.
yeah, John, and when you have done these studies before for folks that are bringing recommendations, we get to the end of it. What do you recommend? How many recommendations should there be? Or how are you looking at this as we get towards the end?
Well, I would say usually it's somewhere between half a dozen to a dozen things that
Right.
you can implement.
Mhm.
And if it's too many, you'll lose focus. And but you want it to be robust. You want it to be enough. I've done a lot of these. I'm being patient. I'm trying to be objective and not biased. I'm trying not to overshare my bias with you. I already have some bias about what I'm seeing.
Right,
We're formulating ideas about what we think will work and what we don't think will work in your community. But all of our work is recommendations based on experience. It's your decision. We don't make any decisions either. It's up to the community to figure this out. But we're here as a resource.
right, correct. So, John, as they do the rest of their survey, as they go through and get into the field data collection and all that, John, you'll provide us with recommendations that you see are viable to make to our council. And then we'll look at, our tool here, our recommendations that come to us, and then we'll have the final say-so of recommendations that we'll take to the city. So is that what I'm understanding, correct, John?
Yes.
Yeah.
And on that note, at least my understanding of this has been not just recommendations, but I think it's also important that we are able to put to bed maybe a lot of ideas that people have. Like, I love that we had this whole assessment of the parking garage in this packet. And if we don't recommend that, I think that needs to be somewhere front and facing. And same thing with the survey. We see a lot of people who are talking about, let's make Butler a one-way and Water a one-way.
Yeah.
Okay, well, is that even feasible? If it's not feasible, let's put that out there just so, because there's so many good idea fairies running around this town who just think they know what's going on. So I think it's important that we make it clear that we have deliberated on a lot of these topics. And if we're not recommending it, it needs to be easily accessible.
And I think that would be great as I talked with you, Ryan, not right now, but later on, maybe during the summer or later on during the survey, to put an infographic together with the information he's sharing, with the information Alex is sharing. I like Alex's verbiage. And talk about what we worked on and how we listened to everybody to come up with the conclusions that we came up with. So some kind of cute little video that we can share, something fun to watch. And I think you've done a great job with it. Sarah, you put those together, haven't you? Or who does that? Do you do that, or?
Yeah, me, but
You've done a couple of them already for city. And I know there's software that does that.
yep. But yes, we can figure out a good way to message some of this information out the right way. Absolutely. I think you're spot on. We want to make it digestible and make sure folks understand.
Yeah.
I have a question for John for clarification. So you said you don't want to share your biases. But I'm hoping, since we're paying you,
No, I will.
no,
I'm just
yeah,
trying not to do
but-
it prematurely.
that's what I want to find out, because I want to make sure we're not going down a rabbit hole and then you're going, oh, man, they're just
No,
going, you know?
I'm cognizant of that as well.
Okay, I just want to make sure that you're not gonna just listen and appease us, that you're gonna
Right.
give us some of the truth based on your experiences too, so we don't
Right.
go down a
I-
bad road.
Yeah, and I think that what you're talking about, John, that you're our tool right now. And so we're gonna really rely on you and all of your experience when we come to the end and you present us with recommendations that you guys have found through all of your data. All right. Have we covered enough over the survey? Is there anything else, John, that you'd like to go through? I don't know if anybody had a chance to read all of the individual comments, but we're certainly not going to do that now. But I mean, there's lots of reading material. I think with what John said, I was surprised to see that most people that took this survey are retired. But
We're an aging population.
yeah, we are. I know. We are aging population. And not as many business owners as I would have liked to have seen that took the survey. Even though I know we got those cards out to everybody and we did help share the QR code. And I think you did a fine job of communicating the survey online and on social media. So, and thank you for that. Is there anything else about the survey, John, that you want to go through with us?
No, I think that covers it. Gregory, thank you.
All right, thank you. You guys, if there's anything else that, or if there's nothing else that you'd like to go through, let's move on right into stakeholder interviews. John, you spoke to our stakeholders here, and that is on page. Through all these comments.
106.
106, thank you. Page 106. And John, can you again identify all of the stakeholders that we chose? Is that listed here?
Generically, I have their names. I don't have them in front of me, but these were individuals that I believe Ryan had identified, or I don't know who he consulted with on the list, but they were representatives of some of the property management companies there in town.
Right.
Event planners, arts
Mhm.
organizations such as the Saugatuck Center for the Arts,
Right.
Chamber Music Society, and I think I talked with one marina operator. So I had really good participation. We talked to 10 people. And these
Okay.
interviews ran, I don't know, 30 minutes or so.
Uh-huh.
And we gave them questions in advance of the phone call and went through all the questions. And what you have in front of you here is a summary of the responses. And they were anonymized. Some people didn't care, but you know, we wanted people to open up and tell us what they really thought. And so there was some confidences that were protected for this particular survey.
Mhm. Mhm. Is there any takeaways that anybody read from any of the stakeholders' comments? Anybody?
Seem to be all over the place, like.
Yeah, they were
A lot
pretty
of
all over the
opinions,
place. I
yeah.
agree. I agree. All right. Well, if there's nothing else to be said about stakeholders' opinions and conversations, we'll move on to topics for discussion. D, cost to build and operate a parking structure in Saugatuck. And if you look, you'll see that 2-pager that he sent us. That's way down in the packet at page 120. I believe. No, here we are, 119, the estimated cost to build and operate a parking structure. We see it's expensive. But would start at about 7 million, can be up to about 10 million altogether. And you know, with the price of it and with what we're gaining, Are there any opinions on if anybody thinks it's worth it? Gary, what do you think?
Certainly not downtown. My only thought was, does the high school have a need for more parking? And if they did, could some structure be there that we could partner with them on? Maybe. Just a thought.
Mhm.
Otherwise, I don't think a structure belongs downtown anyway.
And why, is the sightliness of it, or?
Yeah, it's just not who we are. It's just not.
Uh,
We can't lose the character of this town.
Right.
We see so much going on around us. And, I live in my little bubble right downtown, and I see all these trees getting cut down with developments and all this stuff. We don't need a parking structure downtown.
Real quick, I would like to go around the table so that John can get an idea on our temperature on this subject real quick. But I will say that, sitting on city council, I feel it very challenging to try to ask our constituents if they would like to pitch in for a $7 to $10 million parking structure. I find it almost impossible. But what do you think about a parking structure, AJ?
As much as I respect Becky and Wendy, I think absolutely not. And that is nested in our master plan and what kind of guide for this community is about based on what Gary was saying. And I think it would be very detrimental to the community.
Right. Kathy, what do you think about a parking structure?
don't.
Okay,
There was one suggestion that during the winter, people could use it for storage,
I remember that.
but you can't store anything. Boat storage is what we really, that businesses would be looking for. And as you can see, the storage barns are much different
Right.
design
I
than the
talked to-
parking structure, so it's
I-
not
Yeah.
part of the.
I talked to previous council folks who were on council when that subject did come up to council. I want to think that might have been around 2012, 2010, that area. And that was one of the concerns too, was, what would happen to this during the winter? Vandalism, kids would be hanging out in it, there were a lot of things. Alec, what do you think about a parking structure?
I'll vote no. I need to agree wholeheartedly with AJ on we need to get this messaging out there, what this
Right.
costs and what it is. And in addition to character of the town, in addition to the cost of it, I'd like to add that I don't know that 300 parking spots would matter.
Mhm.
Just facts.
Wendy?
My opinion aside, I mean, if I look at this benefiting the taxpayers, I would say no, for sure. And again, you look at the number of spots. I don't think it would benefit either, as much, so. I would
Sounds
say
like
no.
you guys are pretty in agreement with folks that took the survey here. How about you?
Well, I mean, for the greater good, I would say no. That it doesn't fit into the community and obviously it's not cost effective. And if it's definitely on the master plan, then that's a no.
I have to admit that back, I was newer to town back then when it was brought up. Well, I lived here for maybe 10 years, by 2010. And then I thought it was a great idea.
Yeah.
But now that I've been here for 25 years, not so much. Mike?
Yeah, I think just cost prohibitive. It just doesn't seem to make much sense. Yeah, and aesthetically, again, yeah, I'm pretty much on board with everybody.
And we don't want that to influence your decision at the end, John. But
Well-
it sounds like we are in agreement with a lot of the people that took the survey here. So.
Is that on the master plan?
You skipped here.
No, it's sorry, it's
no, I did
not on the
first.
master, it's based within the master plan and kind of the character of the community and the things that it emphasizes, just in my opinion, a parking structure does not fit
Yeah.
within, but there's no like strict abolition. against
Well,
it.
I would consider looking at that and being proactive, right? Instead of being reactive.
Well, we're doing that now. We are
Yeah.
going through the master plans.
Yeah, and I think that is something that
Yeah.
should definitely be looked at and put on there if
Yeah.
that's something that comes out of this.
Ryan, John, will I have you on, John, because you, of course, do the agenda. Do you think this is something that we should put on the agenda, the creation of a communication, so that we can kind of narrow down these details and give you maybe a little bit of direction of what we'd like to see in an infographic or an infomercial type video?
Yeah, I don't know if we need it necessarily as a.
Are you getting
agenda
enough?
item, but yeah, I think I've heard the feedback today on
Okay.
trying to start to get some messaging out. I think Walker had initially put something together, but we haven't shared it just because we were still early on, but
Right.
yeah, I'll circle back with John and we can talk about what
All right.
it might look like.
Yeah, not sure. So that's why I asked both of you,
Yep.
you know, if that's something we want to kind of start thinking about, because, you know, August is going to get here a lot quicker, you know, than we think, so. So cost and operate, so it looks like a big nil to us, John.
Yeah, I'd like to add a little color as to why I put this on the agenda. I think oftentimes what happens is in some communities, people have a knee-jerk reaction. Oh, we need more parking. We need a parking deck. And that judgment is made with no regard to the cost of that solution. And I think when you're looking at solutions, you always have to look at context. And I think this adds a lot of context to that particular decision and whether it's right for the community or not. And, you know, for those people who think that a parking deck is the solution, would they change their mind if they understood what the economics look like? You know, $1 million a year to build and operate and maintain a parking garage. You got to compare that to the city's annual budget, which, as I understand, it's about 5.8 million. So it's a huge chunk. And, you know, I think that context is important. And secondly, the thing that I would add is we will definitely have a recommendation that comes out of this that one of your largest challenges is going to be communicating. And I tell communities all the time, you don't have a parking problem, you have a communications problem. You haven't done a very good job, and I'm not saying this to Saugatuck, I'm just saying in general, maybe it applies to Saugatuck. I tell people that, you know, you need to do a better job of communicating what your parking resources are, you know, where you have available spaces, what the options are for people. And you need to reach people where they're at. You know, there might be different mediums that need to be tackled. You know, one size doesn't fit all. One medium, everybody's not on Facebook. Everybody doesn't listen to the radio. Everybody doesn't participate in online surveys. So, you know, you gotta kind of have to find people where they're at. And the communications is a huge item, and I think a really important priority for this particular project.
When it comes to communication, you know, and we can work our hardest to communicate things to the people that live here, our 1,000 residents. But when it comes to the bulk of our summer parking and people coming and going, I think signage and wayfinding is going to be the best way to communicate to folks like those, or folks that visit our websites like the CBB website, when they're coming here, looking at those things. They're not necessarily going to be taking online surveys or, you know, on our community Facebook pages. They're people that are coming to visit our town. And we're talking the tens of thousands that are going to be coming through here this year.
I think we also, though, need to focus on the communication, like Alec and AJ were saying, and frame it, but we also have to be talking to the constituents and saying, well, this is why we don't think a parking garage is a good idea, and this is why we chose these recommendations.
Right.
So I think it's double-sided. Yeah, we have to communicate how to park to all the people who come here,
Right.
but we also have to communicate outwardly to the people who pay the taxes as well. So we can squash, you know, rumors or squash the things like, but we need a parking garage, you
Yeah,
know? Well,
yeah, some of the
we do have-
misconception.
Yeah,
Like in the percentage, you know, like Ryan, like Alec was saying, you know, less than 1% of our parking is used for outdoor dining. I think that can be a hot topic where maybe half a dozen people are getting heated about it, but it's getting a lot of attention on Facebook. So I think it's a case of a few people and really loud voices that stirs it up when it comes to that subject. So I think you have a good way of saying that, Alec, saying, working with percentages like that when we're talking to people. Redirecting
Reframe.
their view, reframing their view. Yeah. So, all right. Anything else that you'd like to share about parking garages, John?
No, I don't think so. I think that covers it. Thank you.
Parking structures. Then we'll move on to E, paid parking considerations for Saugatuck. We kind of went into this a little early. Any kind of insight that you'd like to give us, John, on paid parking considerations?
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head earlier in this meeting. I believe the comment was made that, we looked at quite a few different communities in Michigan that have a tourism base, and a lot of them are just not charging for parking. So that's not to say you couldn't, but you might be swimming a little upstream with that, and so there might be some additional challenges that come along with that we need to be mindful of. It looked like time limits are pretty common. You have time limits. And we saw a wide range of enforcement. Some communities are enforcing their time limits with rigor and others are not. We'll talk at a future meeting about enforcement and what some of those considerations might be.
Okay, great. I think we already talked a lot about paid parking. So unless anybody has anything else to add to that, we can move on to F, signage and wayfinding assessment. Can you walk us through that?
Yes, I've asked Bobby Mordenti, one of my colleagues at Walker, who was the lead on this signage and wayfinding, to join this meeting. And so Bobby's going to run you through this real quick, if that's okay.
Yep, please do. Thank you.
Yeah, afternoon, everybody. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yep.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you having me on. I kind of wanted to walk through kind of the signage and wayfinding assessment. And I first wanted to frame this as kind of the process and what Walker takes in when they start doing this assessment in these downtowns is we look at it from the user perspective, right? The user experience and the user, infrequent first-time visitors, right? So how does that experience work with these kind of infrequent or first-time visitors? So I looked at everything from kind of the arrival into downtown Saugatuck, how that plays out, and then when you get there, right, the idea is to have basically what you want to do is park quickly and efficiently, right? You want to get people parked so they spend more time downtown. They spend more time kind of experiencing kind of everything that Saugatuck has to offer. And so I walked through these kind of different sections and worked through kind of current conditions. I worked through, everything from arrival signage to, looking at parking signage. Is it clear enough? Is it, is everything kind of working through accommodating this experience? And so I don't want to kind of go through the whole thing, but I just wanted to frame you on what kind of the process was. And then, taking that experience and taking that, those observations, we start going into these recommended improvements and things that we can address and things that we can kind of look for areas of opportunity. And yeah, you can kind of see on the screen here where this is kind of the observation, right? As you're entering in the downtown. So it's taking everything from entering the downtown to basically you get out of you find parking, you park, now you're trying to walk to a destination. How does that experience feel like? And I went through kind of this process throughout the whole kind of assessment to really see these areas of opportunity within the downtown. So like I said, I know it was a lot, so I don't want to necessarily go through the full document, but I at least wanted to frame it for everyone to kind of understand kind of Walker's perspective and how we kind of look at signage and wayfinding.
Yeah, I have to agree, the on-street parking signage has too many signs and too much information. I absolutely agree with that. It's very cluttered looking, and I think this is a great time to talk about signage right now, because on city council, we are working on city signage as we speak. We have a committee set up right now. So I think by the time we go forward with recommendations on signage, and if there's any more information or anything else that you can give us about this would be excellent. I would like to see this go forward as a recommendation with the city as the city works on their overall signage and wayfinding. So
Yeah, and one thing sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. One
No.
thing I did want to talk through is the user experience also doesn't necessarily start in the vehicle, right? There's this online communication element to this that I see also potential opportunity for, right? Where you have,
right.
you're communicating where to park online, you're sending things out, updating it all. So those are different areas to kind of consider as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I see that you noted earlier, like at the top of Saugatuck page, that would be a great place to, and I know we're working on redesigning all of this, the website as well, to really have something that stands out about parking here downtown, as well as maybe perhaps working with the CVB, to have something close to your landing page that really sticks out about parking downtown in our areas. So that was a good point. When I read that, I thought, that's right. We need to have better communication online as well.
Yeah, and I will say once you start kind of, putting these elements online, the information, especially if it's consistent and what the city is providing, it starts kind of circulating in different platforms. It's getting pushed out to social media, so the communication really starts to kind of take over. And in the online, people are sharing different things. You're starting marketing, if there's different events, but you're also linking it to the parking information and mapping. So, that's something that I think is very tangible, very short term that we can kind of work with you on to kind of improve.
Would be real effective.
Yeah, that would be really effective. Correct. And I saw the examples you showed in Holland. I have to agree, when I'm in downtown Holland, it is somewhat easy for me to find where their lots are. And when I'm looking for parking there, and I have given props to Douglas for their wayfinding.
I know, I wasn't sure if that was a rivalry or if I should include that or not.
No.
I wanted to at least share what I thought. So
No, I think everyone on council has praised Douglas for their wayfinding efforts. They've done a great job with it. And again, when I'm in downtown Holland, and I think it's that universal P, you know what I mean? Just to see that P with the circle makes me feel like this is what I have to pay attention to when I'm driving downtown, that little circle P and that arrow. And I just need to follow that. When I'm in any major city, that's what I look for. But I don't see that logo here in Saugatuck. So I think that's an element that we need to think about when we think about wayfinding here.
Yeah, and really, I mean, looking at your parking facilities and the signage, the parking identification signage, even just letting people know that this is available to park. This is publicly available. I mean, it's a simple P, like you said, public parking sign, large enough for people to kind of see, that just gives them a sense of comfort that they're parking, in a specific, city-owned lot, that provides them with this, like I said, this kind of comfort and like, okay, I've parked here. It's okay. Now I can start to explore the downtown.
Right. And then going back to what, when we talk about parking on the hill, going back to Kathy's comment earlier, making sure people know when we do our signs up there with that P, and allowing people to know exactly how they can park and where they can park. Kathy said it, a lot of times they park on the pavement, but they have to know, how far in that they can park. And I think that has a lot to do with sign placement and how that can be communicated on the signs up on the hill when we go to those recommendations. So thank you for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and think about this too as like a hierarchy of signage, right? Where you kind of have these gateway signs, you have directional signs, and then it works down into the on-street signage and how that plays in. So there's a lot of opportunity in downtown, and I think it's, you know, this is going to be a way to effectively communicate kind of the options and like kind of like you know, John was talking about, where you want to get people parked. You don't want them circling around. You know, you want to get them as soon as they get into downtown, they know exactly where they're supposed to park to make things you know, more efficient as far as a parking system.
Right, right. And I'm also wondering, you guys have done such a wonderful job on that wall that where I used to replace all those tin ads and have to have those remade over there on the drugstore wall. The CVB has done an amazing job taking that over, making it much cleaner looking. And I know that there is a little bit of mention of parking there, parking at the high school. But when I see this, you know, parking lot or, you know, places to park downtown, I'm wondering if the CVB might be a little bit more, give us a little bit more room to talk about parking on that, Alec. I don't know if they would be a little bit more open to,
That's a Gary question too.
yeah, and Gary, that's right, I forgot both of you were on the,
I'm sure. And another thing I'd like to mention is we can't, when these signs are designed, I think it's wise to not copy Douglas, but complement the Douglas
Right.
signs. Because at the CVB, we want to do a very comprehensive wayfinding.
Sure.
Well,
system. And so that these things should kind of work together.
Right.
So, because to most people, they don't know where the dividing line is. They don't know when they're in Douglas. They don't know when they're in Saugatuck.
That's true.
They're just here. And so we have to coordinate to make sure everything works together.
Right.
And the CVB is more than willing. I know Ryan knows from attending the meetings,
Mhm.
you know, we'll be more than happy to help in that
Yeah.
area too.
I think colors and design, but boy, when you put that P there and you know, that universal sign of parking, I think most people know what that means. And, I think that's, you know, an element that all people understand, no matter what the design or color of the sign is.
Just to interject real quick, because I know you mentioned that we were working on the sign ordinance on planning. This shouldn't affect that. That's making sure that what the city is regulating, it's all content neutral, but for better or for worse, the city is able to ignore its own ordinances when they're putting up signs like these. So it shouldn't affect what we're doing.
Right. All right. Anything else about the remote parking options, or I mean, signage and wayfinding? Sorry. All right, let's move it. Hey, thank you for joining us and walking us through that.
Absolutely. Yeah. And if there's any other questions, you know, feel free to reach out to John or I. Happy to talk through it more.
Thank you.
Can I just say one quick thought while we're starting to think about this? Is there an opportunity to have two sets of signs? I know that would require like switching the signs out, but I'm looking on page 138, right? And I see two sets of signs that apply to two distinct halves of the year. Like, you know, no trailer blocking May 1st to October 1st, but no snow parking on November 1st through April 1st. So
Right.
you're only looking at one of these signs for half the year. Like, and you know, maybe there's a summer sign and a winter sign. And you know, the summer sign is the 3-hour parking sign and the winter sign is the snow removal or something along those lines. Is there an opportunity that you could have bigger signs, but is there an opportunity to have a seasonal sign change?
That's a little lift there for the DPW.
I mean, if it's 20 signs, I don't know. I'm just,
There's something we can evaluate and think through and see what
Yeah.
they look like from an operational perspective to get signs in and out a couple times.
Less
a year,
clutter.
so.
Right. Yeah.
And I agree. We need to reduce the clutter. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I know that from living here downtown. I'm constantly, even though I've read it before, I'm making sure it's saying odd or even, and then I have to read the whole thing. Go ahead, Gary. You had something to say?
No.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were. All right, you guys, let's move on to remote parking options. Let's move on to G, remote parking options, remote outs from the task force members who agreed to invest specific options. So we talked about investigating any remote parking.
Talked about Douglas Community.
John? Could you remind us?
Yes.
Yeah,
There were several ideas presented at the last meeting, and several of you volunteered to do some investigatory research to learn more about specifics. So I think the intention here was to hear what you found out.
right. Yeah, remember, you talked about the schools and or,
Yes, and the Douglas Community, I think would be an option, but I think we probably should come to the table with some kind of monetary gift, to use that space
Douglas Community Church.
off of Wiley, yeah.
Uh-huh.
That would be probably very helpful.
Mhm.
And,
How many parking spaces at that location? Do we know?
I do not, right? I mean.
We
I
can
get
look
that
it up. We can look it up. I was just curious.
Okay. And then also I brought up the funeral home that Sadaba used to work with for many years, and that's about 25 to 30 spots, I believe. I have not had the chance to talk to the funeral director there about that, although I see him often for flowers. I will make a concerted point to talk to him. I'm wondering if that spot, could be utilized as an employee parking, with a, with this.
Yeah, the Saugatuck, well, it used to be the Christian Reformed Church on Allegan.
Right.
Allegan and Mason. That's a quite of a large parking lot, and it's utilized during some weekend events where the art vendors, park there, and then the interurban transfers the vendors down to the art fair. That could be a spot as well.
I'll give credit, someone in the survey, when I was reading through it, DPW may hate me for it, but right off of Maple Street, that DPW right behind the fire department, they are sitting on about 3.5 acres, and there's a big open area back there, and I don't know if that would be a potential option for a surface lot of sorts.
Didn't we talk about that at one time about being a remote,
Uh-huh.
a remote space?
I don't remember.
I don't know if it was.
I thought it was brought up at the beginning. Maybe you and I had that conversation, but I know.
I know
know it's
we've
come
had
up.
that talk
Yeah.
with somebody. I don't know if it was Greg Janik or.
Mhm.
But I think this would have to be behind DP, because I think the fire department, they don't own the property behind them, whereas City of Saugatuck owns Blue
Right.
Star all the way to Maple.
Yeah, that's a pretty big spot back there, and they do use it at times, but for the most part, it's pretty empty.
Especially given the new Maple Street corridor we'll be having with.
Right. We'll be having a new road by the end of this year. We're working on that currently, and it would be easier to get a shuttle back and forth from there.
Yeah.
If that were something to do. So.
And
Well-
if it's city owned, that's half the battle.
So is that something that we could talk about, Ryan, with the DPW and how they utilize that, and if that's something that would be a possibility? So by the next meeting, so that we could say that, okay, this is something that we could do, or?
So we are actually looking at some options for that space back there that may or may not involve some additional parking that goes along with it. So so if that's the recommendation is to look for some additional space options, then that certainly could be an option. But that also comes with some facility needs that we have both here at City Hall as well as Public Works, and some options that we're looking at along with kind of our City Hall remodel and some of our needs options. So
Okay.
so I could say, yeah, it's a possibility, but
Right.
it'll kind of depend on how much space is available for that purpose, and then other operational needs that they have out there with dumping things and storing things. So
Right.
Yeah.
And as we move forward with creating a new website, I don't think it would be that difficult to create a dedicated parking page, right? And of course, I think that, that might be, I don't know if we need to make that a recommendation or not, because I think that's something that we can do without a recommendation, or, if it should be, then it can be. And then we can put those labels on, adding that parking icon at places that you're talking about, the church, how we can make that viable. And by our next meeting, maybe we'll do a recap on remote parking options, if you don't mind, John, and we can all do a
Yeah.
little more homework on that.
Yeah, I really second Becky's comment on the church there at Allegan and Maple. As every time I see a big wide open lot.
Yeah.
And I know that obviously there's more wear and tear, and so there's some financial pieces, I'm sure, even for them, that they
Yeah.
would want to consider, but that seems like a really just natural,
Yeah.
Yeah.
easy in and out spot.
And it's easy to connect with the high school parking, right, for a shuttle. I mean, that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, and to have something in writing from them, so it's something that we know that we can guarantee that we're gonna have, and that we
Like a
can,
5-year.
a 5-year, whatever, that we can include on a map for visitors, so that they know that as a designated parking place with, shuttle transportation or whatever that we offer. Kathy?
I just wanted to, you mentioned the website parking page, and I think that would be a really good thing to put in because it shows that we the city, recognize that parking is an issue, and we want to make it easier for anybody coming to the city to find the parking places, even though they are all spread out all over the city and that there are distant connection things too. So I think that would be a really good addition to our website.
You could have one.
Specifically parking and maps and suggestions and
Yeah.
information about the interurban shuttle and all that stuff. Be a
Right.
good page.
Yep, I think that's a great idea. When I go forward, when I talk, it's always been informal because I just haven't known how to approach them yet, I guess, about that subject. The folks at the funeral home, because it was always an informal, yes, you can. And I had a sign in the back of the building that I used to keep back there that I would bring up. Rich used to do it, who at Bright World at times, and we would bring it out during the week or the weekends when we knew that there wasn't a funeral. And that was informal. There was nothing written. I think for the city's sake, it would be good to have some kind of, makeshift contract or something, that we can have with the church, something that I can take to the funeral home that I think that, something friendly, not too, but just something that says, yes, we can use this spot when not in use or whatever, just to make sure that we have that in place. So, yeah.
Would there be liability concerns for businesses like that? They offer their parking lot, but
Yes.
would the city need to be cognizant of the liability
Yep.
thing?
Yep, we can certainly work all that out through agreements
Yeah.
and make sure that things are added to our insurance and, so, good point. I don't know, Mr. Chair, there's been some really great comments that you made at the council meetings, as well as interurban's report to the CVB, and the CVB support of it as well, with kind of, you touched on earlier, the kind of enhanced shuttle service. Maybe you could, just for this group and anybody that watches the meeting video back, as well as Walker, to maybe hear what you're planning this summer.
Yeah, could you talk about that?
Yeah, so, in the past, I guess in the last 5 years, I can say, we generally have run the interurban, kind of like a hop on, hop off.
On
From,
demand.
yeah, from the parking lots, June through August. From the high school, and we would pick up and we would, come down and we'd go to Water Street to the Chain Ferry. That would be a stop, so we could pick up and drop off there. Then we'd continue down on Water Street, and we'd stop at the Butler by the information booth. And that would be a pick up and drop off, and then we'd continue up Culver and then go left on, Allegan, and then back up. And to be honest, over the last couple of years, I've noticed our numbers were decreasing. So the end of last summer, just the last 2 weeks, I changed it. And we picked up at the high school, and we came down, not Griffith. Francis. Yeah, Francis. And then we'd come down to Griffith and we go to Mason, and we would pick up and drop off at the drugstore at that corner where that great sign was, where the map was, all that, right? And then we would just turn right on Butler and then go back up to the high school. So we're only on Butler for, one block. Because what was happening is we'd get caught into all the traffic down on Water Street. I mean, it was weighing us way down and, we couldn't get back up there in time to get, just to continue. So we did that. It was very effective. Now we're gonna add Douglas, we're gonna do parking at Douglas Elementary. So we'll be picking up there and getting over to Center Street, going down, picking up and dropping off at Berry Field. And then, so the flow to the church, the Saugatuck Church now they call it, I think.
Yeah, East Saugatuck Church.
Yeah, on Allegan there, that would flow really nice. We could just, we could go through that parking lot, pick up and drop off, go to the high school, pick up and drop off, go down to the drugstore and pick up and drop off. And the loop, there'll probably be 2 loops in Saugatuck to 1 of Douglas until this gets, caught on. But then the second loop, we would go back over to Douglas, pick up and drop off at Berry Field, go to the elementary, and then come back to Berry Field and continue on.
Did you get all that, John? Yeah, so we're adding, instead of just 1 parking lot, we're adding 2 there'll be a total of 3.
Yeah.
Parking places where people have the opportunity to get on the shuttle. There'll be a parking lot in Douglas, a parking lot on Blue Star Highway, and the high school parking lot that will be included this year for the first time in that shuttle service. Whereas in the prior, it was just the one high school, the Saugatuck High School. So we feel that that's going to help with our parking.
Very good.
Yeah. All right, remote parking operations. So let's do a little bit more homework and talk about that next week so we can kind of figure out exactly for sure what lots we can use. So, and then, okay, let's move on to H, framing the parking challenges in Saugatuck. And we have an attachment here on page
147.
147. Thank you. Yeah. All right, John.
Let's see. Yeah, this was intended to, maybe start pulling together from some of the surveys, the stakeholder survey, the online written survey, maybe some of our own research and observations, just to try to start framing what we see as some of the challenges, some of the existing conditions, and then some of the options that this group may want to explore, including a discussion of the various pros and cons of those options, including giving thought to, unintended consequences. So this was really just some musings that, we're putting out there for your, consideration. You have tensions between different user groups. Tourists have different parking needs than, residents, and residents have different parking needs than employees and business owners. You also have tax-paying citizens that are regulars, that they might have a favorite restaurant they go to once a week or once a month, and their needs are going to be different from tourists. So, how do you accommodate these different user groups, and how do you protect the parking requirements of one user group versus another, or do you even want to do that? So we've tried to put some, thoughts on paper here and summarize what we think some of these tensions and issues might be. One thing that we, as an out-of-towner, have noticed is when people complain about parking in Saugatuck, it tends to be focused on a pretty short portion of the year. And that's not to say there's not a problem or that that problem should be dismissed. But when you try to solve that problem economically, the seasonality or the shortness of that is impacted, I think, by the economics. You know, if you had a year-round problem, you're probably going to have more leverage to get after that problem economically than you will if it's only a problem, you know, 3 or 4 months out of the year.
I noticed when you talked about paid parking, I was looking at the price of these meters. Those are also pretty pricey, eh?
They are, and so I think a lot of lay people think about parking as being a huge moneymaker. Oh, the city's charging me for parking. I'm getting ripped off, you know?
Right.
And really, when you dig into these parking operations, most of them are, you know, they're not making money. You know, they're barely covering their expenses. In many cases, they're not even doing that.
Right, right. And now we talked about meter equipment. How about the signs that we see, like in the paid parking that we see the private paid parking lot that we have here in Saugatuck? This doesn't reflect a cost of those kind of QR code signs, or does it?
If they're privately owned, that would
Well, that
be.
one's privately owned, but if we were to have, you know, say that was one of the recommendations.
Yeah.
That, you know, to have paid parking, would that be an option of having a QR code on the street as opposed to a meter?
It could be, yes.
Okay,
That would be an additional expense.
that's true. Yeah,
And then you have the
I'm just-
cost of the mounting, you know, whether you're installing a pole to mount the signage.
sure. Yeah, and then of course the software and all of that.
Yes.
Do we know how profitable that is for them? I suppose unless we ask them.
For these guys over here, I don't.
My landlord, I can ask him.
What?
It's my landlord. I
Oh.
mean, ask him.
So they're.
In general
charging-
terms,
It'd be nice to know.
Aren't they charging, the tap house? I thought tap house was paying for the use of that lot,
Oh, maybe.
so he's making the money off
Oh,
that.
that. Yeah.
And I don't know if tap house is getting the other, we should look into that. There's rumor it was 60,000 a year that they were getting for that lot,
Wow.
but that's just a rumor, so we need to verify.
Yeah. Well, maybe we can find that out and you can share that at our next meeting.
I can tell you that the Congregational Church accepts donations and we add about $10,000 to our
Yeah,
offerings from our parking lot.
A year.
enough to put new carpet.
That's only the beginning.
Yeah, I know,
of the
but
cost.
yeah, Sarah was sharing with us on the radio show,
But
that was a big support to the church there.
It is, yeah.
All right. So there we have the framing of the challenge. Any other challenges other than, you know, listed, and we talked about a lot here that anybody here on the committee would like to share with us, with parking?
I'd like to make a request, speaking
Yes.
to AJ's point earlier about, this is great. This right here is the most important thing I looked at today in my mind. The
Right.
framing of the parking challenges is awesome. But I would like to add, if we can get the feasibility of one-way Butler and Water Streets, the actual like measurement feasibility of it. Like we haven't really, people mention it, people talk about it, but what's the actual feasibility of changing that, of diagonal parking with one way, of maybe adding a bus lane, like measurement, you know what I mean? Like legal measurements, like what's the feasibility of that? Because that's something we've talked
Are you
about.
thinking like a bike lane too?
Whatever the plan looks like, but what's the feasibility of changing those two streets with our current constraints?
Yeah.
Because that's speaking it back to, again, AJ's lovely point, is that let's either shut it down
Yeah.
or open it up.
Yeah, I remember, Mike, we've had this conversation before about the one-way on Butler
Yeah.
and Waterford many times over the year, 20 years ago or longer. From what I understood, the way the streetscape is in Butler, on Butler Street as it is, I don't think there would be enough room. But that would take a whole engineering study to find out, Ryan. And of course, that would take time and money, and that might be a recommendation that we make to the city, but it wouldn't be, a directive. We would have to really research that to see if that could happen. I know that.
There's not, you couldn't get them to do a preliminary thing.
Yeah, we
It's
could.
not wide.
We most certainly
So,
could.
that's gonna kill it if it's not
Right.
wide enough. So.
Right.
That's all I'm asking
Yeah.
for is, how wide is the street? How wide does a lane have to be? How wide are diagonal parking spots? How wide is a bike lane? Does the math work?
Yeah, right. And I know it's probably gonna be 5 years, maybe up to 10 years, if you look at our plan, our master plan. Eventually down the road, we will be having to redo Butler Street for the utility agreement, for the state utility agreement. But how hard would it be to go to Fleece and Vanderbrink and, ask them, or, ask the city to, it would cost money. It's not cheap to get a drawing.
Yeah.
It's not that easy, is it?
Yeah, I think a preliminary high level look, I wouldn't be surprised if some of that's been looked at in the past a little bit. So I think, John can, maybe, talk with Julie, and he can talk with John Moxley, who's our project manager with the firm that has been with us for a long time, to take a look at. They've done something historically or two. Is that something that they could take a look at as part of the scope that we have for this work, or if it would take more? So I made a note, and I'm sure John has a note, and we can.
Okay, good.
We
I
we
know,
can look
uh,
at it, we could look at it at a concept level.
Yeah.
But we're
Right.
not gonna design it. We're not gonna give you construction documents.
Right. Well, I know when we did the park idea, as we're going forward with Village Park, and we already had 4 renderings. It didn't, but this, of course, we're talking about something on a different level, but it didn't take them long to come up with an additional rendering
Oh.
that accustomed what the PPW would like to have seen. So I just don't know how,
I think concept level, that's.
but I like that. The
Concept level is
concept
great,
level.
that's plenty.
That way we could know if it was doable or not. That's a good idea, Alec. Thank you.
So Butler, and what was the other street?
Butler and Water Street.
Water.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of on Water Street is already diagonal parking,
Yeah.
but not all of them.
I think there was mentioned previously, and I had discussions with some others about wondering if the same might even be true for Lucy, heading, west from Holland, if that could be a one way and make the parking diagonal through there, if there's
Yeah.
enough space as well. That may be another area to look at.
Uh-huh.
I agree with that. I think times people get focused on Butler and Water, and I think Lucy, right at Spear Street, you have it start a one way, and because it's kind of a dead road right now, there's no sidewalk, there's parallel parking on one side, it's
Yeah.
fairly wide. So if you did maybe that could be
Yep.
the winner.
Well, I don't know. I mean, we're talking about maybe 10 additional parking places, right? If it were to be parallel park. I mean, it's more, but I don't know if it's gonna be, substantially.
I'm not sure.
Yeah,
Draw
right.
it out and see. And I think, to your point, Mr. Chair, like Butler Street, even Lucy Street, and some of these streets are gonna be coming up for some major road work in the next, 5 or so years, and now's the time to.
Now's the time to talk
Take
about
an
it.
initial look to see if that might be some options that we need to really kind of incorporate into that future planning, so.
Great. Anything else before we move on, as this meeting is going into its second hour? We'll go to item I, discussion of field date collection details, and we've got our dates already. The dates were scheduled for the week of May 2nd. If, weather is nasty, we're gonna move it to May 9th. We thought that around tulip time, when folks are coming in and out of our town from Holland, would be a good time for an off-season field data collection. And then peak season, they'll be here during the week of July 13th. That's after July 4th and before Venetian Festival. I think we can all agree that that week is really kind of a peak season where we go. I mean, we already know we're always going to have parking issues during Venetian Festival or during July 4th, during a festival. But I think that's a very good gauge to when it's regularly busy, the week of July 13th. I don't know if there's anything to discuss about that, or if John, anything you wanted to share?
No, that was just a reminder of the dates that we had agreed on.
Right,
I do have a very simple question.
sure.
Is this really necessary? Is it gonna tell us something we don't already know?
That's what I wonder too. That's a good question.
I mean, we know that what are they gonna find? They're gonna find that a bunch of spots are there all day and those are workers. They're gonna find a bunch of spots that come and go.
Right.
And those are visitors.
Yeah.
We know all that already.
Yeah.
It seems like this is, I mean, a costly
Uh-huh.
adventure that
Right,
is not gonna yield anything we don't already know.
yeah.
Just a thought.
John?
No, I don't disagree with the comments. If you don't do it, then you're opening yourself up for criticism. Well, how do you know? You didn't collect any data.
That's true.
But I can tell you that after having done lots of these, we pretty much know what the data is going to say before we even collect it. And we can develop a lot of recommendations without the data, but the data helps confirm, it helps add credibility to the study. But oftentimes it's confirmation of what we already know.
Right. Right. There is a point to be said about that it does help to make the study credible rather than folks, because we will get asked that a lot, Gary. How do you guys know? How did you come up with this solution? How did you come up with this recommendation? How do you know how long this person is parking there? And we can say, well, because we watched them do it. We've got the numbers to prove it. So I think you've got a point there, John, with that. Anything else? We will move on to J. Our remaining task force meeting dates, you'll see that we changed the one for May, for the month of May. There was some conflicts with John, and we wanted to see what would work best for the month of May. We have it scheduled for May 12th, but we wanted to come here to the task force here and find a day that we can all be here, including John. We thank you for your guidance, John, and we want to make sure that you're here at all of our meetings. So John said that he would be available on May 11th or 13th. That would be on a Monday or Wednesday of the month of May of our next meeting. That would be Monday the 11th or Wednesday the 13th. The 13th works better for me personally. That's a Wednesday, but I'm flexible. If I need to close the flower shop early or whatever, I can do that. We just wanted to kind of reach out to the rest of you before we made that decision if anybody had a conflict on those days.
I'm open for any of those days.
If everybody's open, then how about you, Mike?
Yeah, I think so. It's
Okay.
hard to know. This,
Right.
I was gonna say, I think so.
Okay. How about you, Ryan? Are you good
Yeah, yep.
on either day?
Either day, we can make work here and the room's available as well, so.
And the room's available. Okay, so can we do it on the 13th? Does that sound good to everybody? Wednesday, the 13th for our next meeting? May 13th?
Yep.
We'll plan on that. John, is that good for you, that Wednesday?
Yes, yeah, that's perfect. Thank you. Thanks for accommodating that change.
Of course. And then the rest of the meeting dates, June 30th, that's on a Tuesday, July 28th, that's on a Tuesday. Our final meeting, August 18th, is also on a Tuesday. Any other items, John, that I might have missed? I feel like we talked about a lot.
No, there was a lot on the agenda, so thank you everyone for your diligence in reviewing the materials and participating. It was a lot, and I knew it was going to be a lot. I figured we'd take up the full 2 hours today.
All right, very good. And our next steps, I know I've got a little bit of homework to do. I want to reach out to the funeral home. You're gonna kind of reach out to the church, and we'll see how we can finalize those as additional parking. And then, of course, you're gonna practice going from business to business, because you'll be doing that probably, but I would suspect maybe the June or July might be good for that.
Yeah, do you want me to have it done by the June meeting? Would
By
that, I
June
mean, what's gonna
30th?
be more useful for data wise? Cause you said you wanted to narrow down the recommendations
Yeah,
from June, so probably be best to have it then.
it would kind of be nice to know that, yeah, by our June 30th meeting.
Yeah,
And so if you could, get a list from Sarah or from Ryan of the businesses that are registered.
okay,
And then you can go through and go from business to business and ask how many employees that they have parking downtown.
sounds
And just
good.
that you're working with the task force. So we just wanted to find out how we can make parking easier for you.
But
So-
reframing it
What
positively,
exactly
I
are
like
we
that.
asking? Then? Are we just asking how many employees? Are we asking how many employees?
Probably per shift, and then where do they where are they parking?
Uh-huh.
I think it might be useful to have like a snapshot, like,
Yeah.
and just whatever time you do it, like, who's parked here right now? Can you just ask real quick, who's parked downtown right now? So that it's more of like kind of a snapshot.
Yeah,
Mhm.
Um,
yeah, no, that sounds good.
I think that's a good idea. Otherwise you might be mixing your fruits. You might be comparing apples to oranges.
Yeah.
Right. You'll be in there talking about grandma's bundles. And,
I'm okay with that too. Build
Uh,
a community.
All right, very good. And then, do you think, by our May 13th meeting, if they do the field data, the field collection, data on May 2nd, that we'll have, any kind of results from that by our May 13th meeting, or that we would have any kind of results or what they found or any findings by the,
Julie, you're on the call. What do you think?
Yeah, I think we'll have that summarized in a manner that we can present to the task force at that point.
okay, good. We can see what you guys came up with. All right, very good. And, that's it. With topics of discussion, we're gonna move on to 7, correspondence from Lauren Stanton. If you look in your packet, I know I took the time to read it. I have been acquainting myself with Key West quite a bit lately. I'll be going back in May as well. But I won't be discussing parking. But I want to thank her for providing that, you guys. It kind of was like an eye opener to me. And you can see that a lot of their solutions really rely on public transportation.
Yeah.
And so I really think, I'm really glad that you kind of put that into motion, having this better shuttle service and having more options, more parking for people available. And I know that that's going to help overall. So I want to thank
Yeah,
you for
it's, yeah, I'm looking forward to it, so.
that. And then we'll go to number 8, public comments. At this point in the meeting, we like to welcome any public comments from public. If you'd like to come up to the podium, state your name, your residence, where you live, and you have 3 minutes. And speak into the microphone so that folks online and our recording can hear you.
Hi, everybody. My name is Denise Barowitz. I have been a resident of Saugatuck for 7 years. I've been coming here for over 50. I know I don't look that old, but I am. But I am going to be moving across the pond here very soon. So I also live part-time in St. Joe, another longtime resort town. I have some comments both as a insider resident and a visitor. And I'm a person who believes in being a visitor in your own town.
Yeah.
Seeing how things work. And I participated in the survey. I never have a problem finding parking. And so I do know that there's times that's harder. And it takes a little bit longer. But I don't have a problem parking. And there's times I could walk, but I drive. And because I might then be leaving and going somewhere else, to another part of the town. But I made some notes. You folks are doing, it looks like a great job. Personally, I think that when you believe your task force is going to be wrapping up, I would suggest that you think about maybe having a small group that continues and works with the other parts of the city committees in that. It really seems like that would be needed. But some things that I'll tell you that I have experienced, employees do take parking from other people, okay? So right now, I live at Saugatuck Harbor, the employees park all along the park to come to work at the Butler and other places. Not all of them. I see some of them walk from someplace else, but then they do take parking. The same thing happens in the other city I live in. I think that figuring out how businesses can help with that. There may need to be incentives. I don't know the answer, but it's known that employees do take up parking. So, and I'm gonna jump around because I made a lot of different notes. Regarding signage, we are an art city. Signage can be creative. It can make people smile, even if you want to deliver bad news about 3 hours, you know. Please leave in 3 hours so somebody else can park here. There are some businesses that definitely need 15-minute parking, like the city, someplace to run in someplace, a coffee place, etc. I think one thing with signage that's confusing is that we talk about parking at the high school. And then we talk about the interurban. A visitor doesn't know there's a connection there. But it sounds like you folks are tackling those things. But as insiders, we think that probably everybody knows you catch the interurban for the school parking. The signage is not real explicit at explaining that.
You're already at 3 minutes, so if you could wrap it up.
I'm at 3 minutes.
Yeah.
You know, your hotels and your restaurants and that, they're your best communicators, and your visitors bureau. The art fair and vendor parking. So in St. Joe, I was very involved in not the Krasl, but a different one. And we explicitly had the vendors mandated that they park someplace else. Okay. I think that, you know, if you guys divide up into little groups like you're talking about doing, but maybe even in twosomes and drive around and try to look at things with fresh eyes to see, you know, what it looks like. One-way streets. St. Joe has one way. South Haven has one way. Holland has one way. Kalamazoo has one way. Some streets will have angles on one side, parallel on the other. I don't think that you need paid parking. It was a disaster last year. The city, you probably already know about this. The city spent hundreds of thousands. It was a disaster. The locals stopped going.
You're right.
Dearborn tried it a number of years ago. It was a disaster. They had to stop. Anyway, I don't think you need a parking garage. I just think it's a matter of efficiencies and effectiveness. And you folks have already been talking about, you know, are we parking on the correct side of the road?
Right.
Even though the fire department said this, well, maybe that's why they're a small task force that continues is important to really look at some things like that. Anyway, those, I think you guys are doing a great job. And it's a resort town. It's like going to Chicago. You know that you're gonna have a little trouble parking. You know that you're supposed to be walking. That's why you come here. You come here to shop and eat. That means walking. So.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
And I wanted to go ahead and give you that extra time that I gave you, because I appreciate you coming from St. Joseph and being a part of what went on over there. That helps us, and we also appreciate the praises.
Yeah.
This isn't an easy thing to do.
No, it isn't. And I would get more involved, but But now I'm gonna be living in Douglas, so.
All right, let's go around the table with task force member comments. I'll start off with you, AJ.
Great meeting, good discussion, no further comments.
Okay.
Likewise,
Okay.
glad we got to talk about some things that we haven't talked about before.
Yes.
I think it would be interesting and useful to have all of us put down our 5 or 6 things that we would come to city council with as a means of homework, possibly for the June 30th meeting. Just so that we can start to see what that looks like, what those recommendations look like. And I would love to hear everyone's thoughts on this table, tangible 1-sentence thoughts. Thanks.
That sounds good. I know, that's the goal of Walker and Associates to come up with those recommendations at the end of this. But I like the idea of each of us having 5 to 6 recommendations that we think we would make right away. So let's thank you for suggesting that. I absolutely agree. So if we can think of doing that and bringing that, what we think recommendations might look like already.
Which
when
meeting is that for the?
5 to 6 for our next
June?
meeting for May 13th.
Okay. Just writing it down. Okay, I got to say, I'm super excited about the new interurban loop. I know Douglas has been asking for this for a long time, so it'll definitely help them too. So excited for you and us.
Speaking on behalf of the interurban, I just can't say, thank you enough to the community. They've always supported us in whatever we've asked, and we couldn't be here without them. So just want to say thanks to the community.
I felt like I was back in school cramming, reading. Now Alex has given us homework.
Probably do it right now off the top here.
But I look forward to where we go.
Okay, very good. Mike?
Yeah, good meeting, a lot of good ideas, a lot of good discussion. I did have one quick question though, because I know you see you're talking to the church in Douglas, correct?
I can talk to both.
Oh, so you can do the other, I was asking who's gonna talk to the church
You're
over
gonna
on
talk to both of those churches, right?
Yes.
Okay.
on Allegan and
Correct.
May, okay. And just going back to that real quick, and I don't want to go, but so like he brought up, and I think this is something you could have the church do themselves. Like he said, have like food trucks or something to make it welcoming. But even if the church wants to put like, water and sodas and candy out there for sale.
Holy water,
Holy water. But I mean, but
pamphlets.
it'd be an incentive for them to make money. So I think
Sure.
that would help them, I think, want to do it.
That's a good idea, a suggestion you might want to make.
Just to say, you put up a little farm stand or whatever, and make some extra money. And that would, people, you're driving in from Chicago, you're thirsty, you want to buy some water for your kids or whatever. I think it's just,
Perhaps a funeral home might offer 10% discount.
there you
on
go.
But I mean, that's a good point.
No, it is, yeah.
Let them say, hey, you have a captive audience here.
Exactly. Yeah.
If, not a church pamphlet, water, like you said, cold water. I think that's a great idea.
Can I respond to that? We have, if you would like to donate, you can help our church ministry program.
Right, they have a
That's
donation.
all we do.
They want to do, they can do whatever they want, but I'm
Yeah.
saying, but something, help them.
That would be an incentive.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying.
I want to thank everybody for being a part of the committee. I know sometimes, John, it might seem like we get a little off track or whatever. I try to give everybody an opportunity to express themselves, even if we kind of jump ahead sometimes or jump back. So I want to thank you for your patience as well of getting through this almost 2.5 hour meeting. And if that's it, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn, or like to ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
A second.
And that's it. Perfect. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, team.